Yes, sir.
Hi, I'd like some breakfast.
We stop serving breakfast at 11:30.
Rick, have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
Hey guys, and welcome to the Enigmatic Productions channel. I'm your host, Edward Harvey, and I'm joined with Joel Schumacher. So, today, we're here to talk about Joel Schumacher. Let's just talk about him for a little bit for a moment, just on the intro. He was very, very talented, and he just knocked it out of the park with some of his films. Very significant style, and
yes,
he could go from gritty to very real kind of films to very overblown camp-like films.
I was gonna say, like, he's when I think of Joel Schumacher, I think of the combination of being this sort of serious, gritty filmmaker, but with even in them having this kind of level of camp and melodrama that is very much him. And sometimes they weren't corkers, but the ones that did hit it out of the park are iconic now.
Yeah, so it's a tribute video, a top 5 tribute video. He started off as a costume designer. He did like films in the 70s as a costume designer. Most famous one probably Sleeper, Woody Allen film. That sci-fi comedy. He was the costume designer for that. And then he got he went into directing sort of in the 80s. His first directing debut was The Incredible Shrinking Woman. That sounds like a trash tape.
That totally does sound like something that would be on a trash tape. What a title.
That was from 1981. And then it was the DC Cab Mr. T movie. And then it was St. Elmo's Fire. So I think we'll go into our top 5. So at number 5, we had to mention it. I've got a shirt on and everything. We had to mention, it had to be Batman Forever.
Don't work too late.
Yeah, good you picked Batman Forever.
Yes.
Because the other one's a different kettle of fish. Now, Batman Forever was interesting. Now, as a kid, I liked a lot of that movie. And it was like a spin-off from the Tim Burton Batman movies, because they still had that kind of tone to it. But it was a little bit more colorful, and you had Two-Face, which apparently Tommy Lee Jones hated doing. But
he did it just for his kids. Yeah. He did it for his kids, and he was basically trying to compete with Jim Carrey, and you can't really. Jim Carrey's such a massive character. He is that film. You go to watch that film for Jim Carrey. It's very much just his movie. He's overshadowing Batman, Two-Face, everyone. He's very, very vibrant, and he's fantastic as the Riddler, actually. I think he did it amazingly.
His spin on the Riddler is fun. Personally, to me, I never really liked that Riddler for the fact that I was always raised on the animated series, and I always liked that Riddler, the guy in the whole question mark suit and everything else. But Jim Carrey brought an energy that, again, matches a lot of Joel Schumacher's work. It's campy, it's over the top, it's large, to the point that you're right. Jim Carrey takes over everything in that movie. It's all about him. There's nothing. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones you can barely say is a developed character. Batman and Robin are overshadowed by Jim Carrey, and I think it's because Joel Schumacher really gave him a lot of really good iconography to match this bright colored, the jumpsuit, for example.
Well, he was the biggest star at that time. He was. I mean, the thing is with Joel Schumacher's Batman films, the villains are the biggest stars.
Yeah.
So he basically got Jim Carrey in there, and the logo for the movie was the question mark, wasn't it? It had the bat in the question mark. And,
that was good.
Talking about that for a moment, let's talk about the marketing and all the merchandise for a moment for this film. God. The toys. He was basically making a toy commercial, wasn't he, with that film?
1,000%, and I think basically this is the first proper movie that he was allowed to have this sort of. Joel Schumacher was kind of allowed to do all this kind of merchandising stuff, because not a lot of the other movies had merchandisable material, I guess.
And whether you like those movies or not, how bloody striking are they? You know, like how vibrant the costume. I mean, you can tell he's a costume designer first before a director, because the costume work is whether you like everything to do with the costumes or not. With it, they certainly stand out.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And the image I always get that's a striking image from that movie that I think is awesome and sums it up is the Riddler's lair on the island or something like that, where you've got this giant sort of satellite thing that's oozing things like, you know, it's having the green lasers out. In there is nothing but green laser, neon question marks and trapdoors everywhere, and you're thinking, wow.
So
nice.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But anyway, let's draw a line under Batman now, and let's move on.
Yep.
So at number 4, it is. Do you want to say it?
It's Phone Booth.
1, 2. That won't help you. 3.
Now, I actually really, really like Phone Booth.
Yeah.
And it's a bottle movie. A bottle movie basically means it's mostly placed in a single spot and people having to discuss over it, right?
Yes.
And this is the perfect example of him doing serious but adding melodrama at the same time. All the ridiculous tension you got because you got Colin Farrell basically it's trapped in the phone booth being said like I've got a and you got Keith Sutherland doing the I got a sniper over you. You got to do what I say. Da-da-da. It's short. It's breezy. And it's got a lot of tension.
Oh, definitely. What I love about that movie is, well, first of all, one location movies I respect massively, because if you can make a movie that exciting when it's only in one sort of scene, one like scenario, one location, then it's credit to the screenplay, but it's also credit to the director for like making it just the selection of the shots and the building of the tension. If you can do that and have it not boring, it's a very good achievement, I think.
I mean, there's one shot I love is when Keith Sutherland on the other end of the phone is saying, "Grab your hand and put it over," and he's tapping on the end, and just feels a gun, and you can just slowly see the shot of the gun appearing above and grabbing it, and he's revealing, oh, now he's got a gun in his hand, and also now he's got his fingerprints all over it. So you're like, no, it's really, really well told tension, and again, it's weird because it's like. Not a lot technically happens in it, other than there's clearly a man has been taken hostage. He's in the phone booth, but he's now been told demands and to do ridiculous things in order for him to survive. It's a really, really solid thriller.
Yeah. Do you know what it kind of reminds me of? Because of Keith Sutherland's like voiceover work in it. Like it kind of reminds me of like Ghostface from Scream. Like he's kind of like. It's basically Ghostface on Scream on like a weekend off, kind of doing something else. Like, well, let's do this instead.
You know, like in the movies, just as the good guy is about to kill the bad guy, he cocks his gun. Now, why didn't he have it cocked? Because that sound is scary.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Yeah, it's like, I still need to kill someone, but I don't want to go out. All right, make a phone call. Here you go. We'll sort this out.
There's bits like where... Like Colin Farrell's like saying like, if you shoot someone on this street, if we're gonna have 100 cops around here, and everyone's gonna see it, and he snipes the little robot toy, doesn't he? And he says like, "Oh, did anyone see that? I can't see any cops." And it's like that's the kind of thing. Like you can imagine Ghost saying, "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots." It's kind of like.
We'll say like this is something we've noticed basically throughout all the other movies. Joel Schumacher really likes bad guys. He
definitely.
really likes bad guys. I think he revels a lot more in like bad guy sort of villain characters. He revels in playing them well and really making them feel as sinister and as nasty as possible than who the hero is. Because in the Batman movies, Batman is not really memorable, while the supervillains are. Here again, Keith Sutherland, you only just hear him, and as a voice, he's more powerful and demanding than anyone else on screen.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic actor, though, isn't he? I mean, he's obviously one of Joel's favourites because he was in Lost Boys, he was in Flatlines, he was in this. So he's just a Joel favourite, isn't he? A lot of directors use the same actors frequently, don't they? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So anything else you want to say about Phone Booth?
I think what I would say is like for phone. The only thing I say when it comes to Phone Booth is I like I mentioned before. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my few favorite examples of a genre that not a lot of people really do well or not do a lot of, which is the bottle movie or the single room scenario. I always use this one when I'm teaching about drama in particular room, because I feel as if it's done to perfection, and it's done to perfection. It's done quickly, speedily. It doesn't linger, because the whole movie's only about 75 to 80 minutes. It's one of his shortest films. And it goes really fast, really quickly. You get to point A to point B. It's cookie cutter, but also just done at that good pace. There are other movies that do this fairly well, like Buried, which is the Ryan Reynolds buried in a coffin movie, or Room, which half of the movie is just in a room before she escapes and discovers how the real world's like not being captured. But it never really gets to that sense of pure drama like this one does, and I feel like I don't think it has been done like this recently in quite some time.
No. Yeah, it's a great movie. I really liked it at the time. So, moving on. At number 3, it's Flatliners.
Today's a good day to die.
Flatline.
30 seconds to go.
Can you recall any specific emotion or sensation?
No, but there is something out there.
Flatliners is a movie that I've loved for a while. So ever since I was a kid, I remember seeing it when I was young on TV with my dad, and it was one of the first thrillers that frightened me as a kid, because some of the nightmares that they have when they go to the afterlife, and they have these flashbacks. They're really vivid, kind of hellish nightmares. And there's one with Kiefer Sutherland's character. He basically bullied a kid when he was younger. So when he every time he goes into the afterlife, he gets haunted by this kid that he bullied. And there's a bit where, and this kid is really frightening, and it made me think of creepy kids like The Shining and stuff like that. They're always scary anyway. But this kid was basically ridiculously strong and was able to beat up Keith Sutherland, which that sounds like it would be funny, but it wasn't at all. It was really scary. And there's a bit where he beats him with a hockey stick, and but he's always in a really sort of creepy dark area when this kid stalks him and stuff. And I remember that scene really scaring me as a kid, and it was and I was watching it with my dad, and I remember actually saying, "Well, this is a bit too scary for me. I'm going to bed."
Look at you! Little you've become a little bit responsible, going, nah, nope, too much for me. I'm out of here.
And what was interesting, because normally it would be the parent that would say. But my dad didn't realise that I would be scared by this thing. That's the thing, because it was a thriller. It wasn't a horror movie.
Well, that's the thing is it's true. All the afterlife flashbacks, sequences, and everything else are done really well, and it's got that kind of level of just weirdness and creepiness, and you're not entirely sure what's going to happen with most of that stuff.
No, and it's always a disturbing subject matter to know what happens when you die, and that's just fascinating to me. And it gets more scary when they sort of push it more, and they kind of go, let's go for longer and longer and see what I can unearth. And it's just a really scary concept, and I just find it such a gripping thriller. And it's got a good cast as well. Julia Roberts is in it as well.
It's got a good mixture of everybody in there, and I think you're right. I think it's the concept that really got me to watch the movie, and I love how it plays afterwards, the consequences of actually attempting to do that, and how you are traumatized and really freaked out by the idea that you have actually died technically. And how are you going to handle that? And all the performances are great. The same amount of seriousness and melodrama that Joel Schumacher does. It's visually striking in places. And yes, all the doctors are hot, good-looking doctors. I get that. But you know what? That's another Joel Schumacher thing. He loves to have beautiful people doing dangerous things.
Definitely. and I'm all for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so moving swiftly on, we're getting closer. So at number 2, we've got to go with Falling Down.
I want breakfast.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm really sorry too.
Falling Down, right? Now, I really like Falling Down, and I think the whole thing that summarizes the whole bit is is Michael Douglas's performance, which is just the ultimate man on the edge, and just decides to. And I love his idea. He's just a man so frustrated with himself and everything else in the world around him that the opening shot is him just getting out of his car because there's a traffic jam. It's hot. It's boiling. It's very, like, ugly looking as well at that point. Like, it's sweaty and humid. And he just gets out of the car and just walks. And you can see how pissed he is.
Yeah, that movie, I watch that quite often. Even though it's a gritty, like, sort of hard to watch movie in a way, it's like I watch it quite frequently because it has quite a sort of effect on me, kind of emotionally watching it. I really get invested in the characters. Not that I'm saying I'm like that character, I'm not at all.
Yeah.
But it's like it taps into that like frustration of day-to-day life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it kind of like it's creepy to identify with this anti-hero. Because you are really following the villain, really. He's kind of an anti-hero, but he's also kind of like the villain, and you're following his story. Because obviously Robert Duvall's like the hero, isn't he? So yeah.
And that's the thing. You're right about that. It's like you kind of hate yourself knowing that there are moments in the movie that you can totally relate to because you maybe thought about it or whatever. And you're thinking, yeah, I have been angry when they refused to give me the breakfast menu. That whole sequence is hilarious because it's like, look, it's only just been past a minute. You still have the breakfast stuff there. Give me the breakfast. That's what your brain's thinking. But obviously you never get to the point where, right, I'm just going to shoot you now if I don't get my goddamn Egg McMuffin. You know, it's horrible. And also, like, there's other bits as well, like in the movie, which is now kind of, especially in this modern climate, is not very good. Because at moments he is a bit racist. At moments he's a bit nasty. At moments he's a bit everything. But you're right. It taps into that anger that people get from everyday frustrations, and how if you let someone go off the chain, how many of you would do that? Yes, you feel about it, but how many of you would actually do half the stuff he's done?
I mean, I think as well you could argue, I'm not defending the whole the convenience store thing. I think you could argue that if the store owner was white and their prices were that high, he would still kick off the way he does. It's more about he argues, he gets so angry at how much everything costs in the store, doesn't he? And then he obviously he lashes out because he happens to be Asian.
And that's the bit, and then that's the lashing out, and that's where you realise, he's thinking that way, or when he has the interaction with the Mexican muggers and the gang and everything else. Yeah, it's all those kind of things, but they're all little things. For example, it's true. If the prices in the convenience store weren't put up, this wouldn't be a problem. But it's almost in a weird way because he's angry he's angry, but in a selfish way. He's not angry like, he's not doing it for the people. He's doing it for himself. Like, saying, why is this can of cola like $2 extra more than everywhere else? Or why can he not give me that Egg McMuffin right now? It's only just been past a minute. It's all selfishness, all to lead up to the point where he selfishly just wants to spend time with his daughter on her birthday. But going, I would say, the scenic route by going and causing chaos everywhere, especially in the golf course. That's my favorite one, where he's just going apeshit on a golf course.
And now you're gonna die in that stupid little hat. How does it feel?
Yes! It's such, and that's the thing as well. It's Joel Schumacher's all over this, for the point that, again, gritty, serious, darkish tones at times, but it's also a little funny, a little melodramatic, a little camp, and it's all merged together to make, I think, a really, really good packaged movie that also makes you think.
I mean, don't you think it's clever, the fact that he managed to get that comedy in there and make it work? I mean, it's credit to Michael Douglas's acting as well. I mean, his performance is so good. But he's a very dark character, but you do laugh at a lot of things that he does. But at the same time, the bit that really gets to me, that actually, sort of gives me the goosebumps, is sort of the bits where he's so deluded about meeting with his family again, and he's like saying, like, it's just that line when he says, like, we all went to sleep in the dark, and it was like, and everything. I want it to be like everything to be like it was before, and because anyone who's been affected by something like a traumatic thing, even if it was just like a breakup or something, it's like when you want so desperately to go back to how it was before. It's going to hit anyone emotionally. Yeah.
You really want to hit the reset button. And that's what the whole movie's about. And that's why I think, like, this movie still, like, works in that primal level where, you know, where it's not about the politics in this case, but the primal feeling of a man so desperate to make things the way things were. And sometimes you can't do that. And now he's lashing about in at the beginning in that very iconic, you know, trouser, white shirt, tie combo, leading into what eventually looks almost like a terrorist outfit, and the whole thing there, and that it's like he's transforming. Here's the regular man, and how he's transformed into literally a terrorist by the end of the movie. Again, a visual cue that Joel does well, because that's just a costume change. That is very striking.
There's a bit where it's like there's a guy protesting about not being economically viable, and he's a black guy, and Michael Douglas's character is really sort of identifying with him. And this guy, he's kind of, is he racist or not? You know, he's really sort of on the side of this black guy here because he thinks like he thinks, and he's like in the same position.
So maybe this is what I was saying before, that anything that's particularly racist or anything a little bit politically right wing or something, I think it's all been spewed out by his just sheer anger and frustration. And you know, when people get angry, they will say horrible things they don't really mean in the heat of the moment, and maybe that's what's happening there. Because he does relate to the black guy in protest, because he's saying like, hey, I'm not being recognized here, and to the point he agrees and goes, right on, I totally agree. But you know, and you're thinking like that, and they have a moment where they share that moment, but you can see how they're two different ends of the spectrum. The black guy's doing it through protest, right?
Yes.
He's doing it by lashing out angrily with a machine gun at one point.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, it starts off as like sort of passive aggressive, then turns into just aggressive, like.
Yes.
But yeah, he nods at the guy protesting, and he says, I think the guy says to him sort of like, "Don't forget about me," and he's like, he nods as if to, like, in a sort of I won't kind of. I don't think he says I won't, but he kind of nods in acknowledgement.
Like acknowledgement.
You know? Yeah. So the character that is like, that is actually the grotesque kind of like homophobic army surplus guy, and he's like thinking, you're just like me, and he's like agreeing with everything that he's been doing, and he sort of hides him from the police, and he hates the fact that this guy thinks he's like him.
Yeah, it goes like saying, no, I'm angry for very different reasons than you are. I am not a hateful person.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
And again, I think this is why, again, what you're mentioning about the politics of the movie, it's interesting. It's really, really interesting. I think it's a movie that people should at least maybe reevaluate and rewatch in this climate, because then you'll sort of see how I can really see that it's a really good talking movie. Unlike a few other movies that Joel Schumacher's done, this one's one where the narrative and the theme is so strong, you can have full-blown conversations about the theming, about the politics, about the ambiguity of certain things. And that scene with the homophobic neo-Nazi, basically, it was basically a Nazi. You know, is another thing you can have a full conversation about. It's basically forcing you to have hard conversations.
But yeah, great movie. So we're gonna have to move on to the top spot, I think.
We all know what this one is, yeah? Like, do we have to say it?
I think we do.
All right, go on.
It is The Lost Boys.
So where are you? The flying nun? I'm your brother, Sammy. Help me!
Of course it is.
Yes.
Because of course it is.
Yeah.
It's one of the most iconic vampire films of all time. It is one of the most iconic movies of the 80s. It's got everything and a bag of chips. It is brilliant.
Yeah, it's a movie I watch frequently. It's such a fun movie. At the same time of being like a horror movie, it's also a comedy movie. It's also like got that 80s kind of teen kind of vibe, because they've just got like the Corey Haim, Corey Feldman in, and you kind of think, when you think of the 80s, you think of those guys.
Get yourself a good sharp steak.
And they're doing such a hilarious performance. You've got like Corey Feldman being like a junior Rambo.
Yes. Again, yes, that's brilliant. Again, the whole thing, showing Joel Schumacher's style in this is the costume work, for example, is ridiculously over the top and camp. The vampires look awesome, but they're also incredibly 80s cheese.
But what was so great about the vampires is that their costumes for every single one stands out. Even like, because like obviously David, like the main character, you'd think that would make a big job of him and make him the one that stands out. But every single, even like Alex Winters, who's like, he's got this ridiculously awesome jacket. Remember it?
Yeah, I remember. It's awesome. Every single person in that vampire gang stands out with their own unique costume, their own unique personality, but they're all like, you know, the disheveled, long lost, you know, teen gang kind of situation, and it's really, really like kind of cool about that. Especially as well. Another interesting thing is it also plays a little bit with Joel being a member of the LGBT community. What he really did do is, you know, the whole thing how he's luring Michael into the gang is very there is a strong sense of homoeroticism there as well.
Oh, totally.
It's like, come join us. Look, it's almost like literally flirting with him, foreplay before the final act of saying, become a vampire like us. Yeah, look how wonderful we are. I will treat you lovely, Michael. You know, all this brilliant stuff.
What's good as well with the casting in that movie is great, and like the main sort of character, like the Michael character, he looks like Jim Morrison, in my opinion. He looks like Jim Morrison, and you've got like Jim Morrison is up on the wall in the kind of the vampire cave, so you're kind of seeing like why they want to lure him into their gang, because they obviously love Jim Morrison and he looks like Jim Morrison. And you've also got a cover of The Doors in the soundtrack with People Are Strange. There's a cover by Echo and the Bunnymen in the soundtrack, so you've got, it's not the Doors version, but you've got Doors is a very strong theme. And then you've got like the guy who looks like Jim Morrison as the main kind of character. Yeah,
definitely. One thing just to mention while we talk about that, the soundtrack for this movie is actually really, really good. Great songs all over the place, and you know, you've got like People Are Strange, you've got, you know, Cry Little Sister, you've got all these kind of great sort of combination of goth rock and rock pop bands being sort of merged in between, with a very sexy topless saxophone player right in the middle of it all.
Oh, Tim Capello. We're going to talk about Tim Capello. That is such a memorable scene.
It is. It's iconic.
And the thing is, he wasn't really directed that way and put in that costume. That's what he's like. That's how we, you know, when he like performs in concerts and stuff, he's just like that. That's not like Joel's influence of like, I want you to look like this. He obviously got him like involved in the film just because he's like that already.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? You're perfect. I want you to come in, be a greasy bodybuilder, topless, playing a saxophone, which is I think the most 80s looking thing I think in the history of ever.
By the way, Tim Capello is also he has now got his own line of body oil.
No way.
Yeah, you can buy his body oil.
If it wasn't so hot right now, I would totally buy some just to say like, hey.
Oh, but
I can play the saxophone topless too.
I think that is possibly my favourite scene in the movie. I love that song. I still believe that song is such a good song, and it's like it just sums up the 80s. That whole atmosphere in that scene, it's just fantastic.
Let's talk very quickly about how they do the vampire lore in this movie, which is very, very well done, I think. Especially how they seem to follow a lot of the rules of vampirism, and yet they still bend things a bit. Like, obviously, the whole idea that the head of the vampires is actually dating their mum, is the whole sequence there is absolutely brilliant. The whole dinner date gone ruined. It's like, oh, just look at all this garlic, look at it, you know, and all that stuff. Everyone has distinctive look, distinctive personality, and that you root for all of them or you like all of them. There's not a single person here that you're not rooting for. Even the quirky grandpa is fantastic, who gets the ending line of the movie, which is amazing. It's like, do you know what I hate about this place? All the goddamn vampires. And just
every time I watch that movie, it makes me burst out laughing every time I say that line. He performs it so well. It's such a feel-good movie for me. I really find that's my style of feel-good movie. Like, because I'm a big horror fan, so like usually my feel-good movies are still horror movies in some respect. So yeah, I watch that. I usually watch it. It's one of my like early sort of October kind of Halloween movies. I usually watch it as part of the the horror movie kind of run in October.
Run towards Halloween, just to get you into the mood. It's one that it's played constantly, and it's because it stands out and it still works. And it even works even in its sort of weird dated 80s-ness, because everything else about it stands out. It's like the whole thing is, yes, this movie's very 80s, but even then, that's just like a very good frosting on a cake, right? Yeah. The fact that it's in the 80s, that's good frosting on a cake. If that movie was set in any other time period, it would still work because of the strong themes, the attitudes, how the actors and characters are being directed, how things are shot, and how things are all done. It is really, really good and still stands out to this day.
Definitely. Okay, so any other films you want to mention?
Okay, well, we can mention a few. Well, there are plenty of other Joel Schumacher movies we might not have mentioned. And the reason why for some of them is because I feel like the 5 we've mentioned are movies where he's really stood out as a director, and that the movies are just genuinely good. Because there are some other ones which I feel are a bit of a mixed bag, like 8mm, for example, which is really dark. But it's got Nicolas Cage in it as well, which is definitely a plus on my end. Yeah,
this is tying in with his... Because for me, he's got those two styles. He's got the very serious, very sort of gets under your skin kind of dark thriller, which like Falling Down. This fits into that bracket of his filmmaking. So it's a very real, kind of scary, kind of thriller movie that really gets under your skin. And I've only watched that, I think, perhaps once or twice, because it really kind of it makes you feel dirty watching it. It's horrible. It's mainly because of like the whole snuff film kind of industry that he explores.
I feel like the movie is the movie's not a bad movie, not in the slightest. I feel like it's not as great as his other movies, and I feel like I feel like the only memorable part is the whole watching the snuff movie, and then you're kind of watching it with Nicolas Cage, and the whole thing is that whole scene in the cinema where he's realizing what he's watching and how terrible it is. That's an iconic sequence.
Yeah.
Any others you want to throw out there, Ed?
We definitely have to mention St. Elmo's Fire, because that is, I think if we didn't mention it, I think you'd get a lot of people who love 80s movies, like especially John Hughes movies, would sort of kick off, because it's a very memorable Brat Pack 80s teen movie. Yeah, well, I say teen, they're all 20-somethings.
It still has an epic theme tune. Oh my god. Best theme tune ever.
Yeah, and the thing is, the reason why I didn't want to put it in the top 5 as well is because it hasn't got the Schumacher stamp on it, has it? When he got to, like, Lost Boys, a couple of years later, he was really this is what I'm making the movie I want to make, you know?
Yeah, it's like, now this is what a Joel Schumacher movie's like. There are other movies to mention. This is some of his later fare. The thing is, even in bad movies, you can tell it's a Joel Schumacher movie, and sometimes that is, and in some cases, it really works out well. Then it does something weird, like Phantom of the Opera, which is very melodramatic and very camp, but obviously it's based on the musical. But there are some very odd choices, and in particular, having Jared Butler being the Phantom. And he cannot sing, and you're sitting there and things are weird, and there's disconnect. It feels like a disconnect there. But his melodrama and campness is all over this. So if you like Joel Schumacher's level of camp and melodrama, it's all over this movie. But I'm not saying it's good, but it's one that I think you could at least enjoy if you like that kind of aesthetic, I will say.
I mean, he did like he did a few music videos as well. He did like the Kiss for a Rose music video for Seal.
Of course he did.
Yeah, and like
Because-
apparently when Seal when he passed away, Seal I think tweeted out about him how great he was, and he basically thanked him for making his song such a big thing. You know, because obviously it was attached to that movie, and
Yeah.
you know he's like that's been his whole career now. That song just took off. Because
Weird
of that
how
movie.
Seal is run entirely out of a song from Batman Forever. You know what I mean? It's like it's a kiss.
What a
from
song
rose.
though! A great song.
No, it's epic. I'm not judging it, but it's like, wow, Joel Schumacher really did help Seal, didn't he?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
fantastic. So that's about it, guys. That's it for our top 5 Joel Schumacher. I mean, great filmmaker. We've had fun talking about him. It's really sad that he's gone. He will be missed.
Yes.
But what do you guys think? What's your favourite? Do you agree with what we did in our top 5? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Right, thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like. If you want to see more from us, hit that subscribe. See you next time on Enigmatic Productions.